aquarium. I have someone who's not happy, who's sitting near me. But we welcome you all to the kelp forest feeding. And as we get started, we have a couple of housekeeping issues. So one of them is if you're on the carpeting, sit down please. And then the fire marshal has said it's fine to be on the stairs, but you have to be leaning on the railing, so there's a path behind you for people to go up and down. Hello, people on the second floor. That's another good place to be. So as we get started today, everybody take a minute to check your hair, check your makeup, and now let's wave to the people who are watching us on the World Wide Web, because your friends might be at home with the kelp cam on watching us doing the feeding here. Well, I mentioned I'm one of about 1,200 volunteers at the Monterey Bay Aquarium. We are celebrating our 30th anniversary this year. I am only in my 17th year as a volunteer, and then we're going to be joined in just a minute by Mackenzie, who is actually one of our full-time aquarium folks, and she has been diving and feeding in the kelp forest for the last couple years, in addition to doing some kayaking programs and working as a naturalist outside. Well, I love this exhibit, and I'm glad that all of you could join me, because this, when it started, was actually a giant experiment. There was no place in the world that had ever grown giant kelp before. And so when we started the aquarium, one of the things that the scientists wanted to do was to see if we could actually bring giant kelp indoors and grow it in the aquarium. What we found out is that we need three things to actually make it grow. We need the sunlight, so you'll see that this exhibit is open to the sun. The second thing that we need is we need to actually move the water along the entire length of the plant. And so one of the founders of the aquarium, David Packard, who was also an engineer who founded Hewlett-Packard, designed a wave machine that's up in this corner that gives us a 14-inch swell every 6 seconds, and that allows us to wash that natural seawater along the entire length of the plant. And then the third thing that we realized that we needed was we needed something hard for the kelp to hold on to. So our exhibit staff built these wonderful artificial rocks in here, and then our scientists went out, they got those plants from the bay. How many people in the audience are scientists? If you're a scientist, you probably know that we used bungee cords to attach these plants onto the rocks and let them have a chance to build a chemical connection before they took root here. So I think as I've been talking, I have seen Mackenzie enter the water. Good morning, Mackenzie.
Good morning, Michelle, and good morning, everybody at the Kelp Forest Feeding Show. It's so nice to see everyone. Happy Shark Days weekend.
That's right, it is Shark Days. So, Mackenzie, you're in there, and I think you might have some food. What's on the menu today?
I know, how about this? Do you guys think the fish know what's about to happen? I think they're smarter than people give them credit for. They know exactly what's on the menu. So I don't know if you can see through this acrylic bucket, but it's actually, I don't know if you're a seafood fan either. Is anybody a seafood fan? Go ahead and raise your hand so I can see. Oh yeah, I'd say at least 1/20th or 20% of you are seafood fans, so, oh, there's some kelpfish just hanging out. Yeah, so it's all sustainable, actually restaurant grade seafood we have. So if you go to any of the, restaurants on Tannery Row, you're probably going to eat what these guys are about to eat. We got big juicy prawns, blue, squid, calamari, but raw. I think I should probably start this meeting thing. They're getting impatient. Look at this female sheephead. She's just not being shy at all.
So as Mackenzie mentioned, all that seafood is sustainable, and that's stuff that we can find on our seafood watch card. And what's fun about it too is that we actually have people at the aquarium where their career is to work in the kitchen and cut up about 325 pounds of seafood every day. So kids, if you're looking for a job when you get older, that's a career that you too could have. But we have to have all that to feed all the animals in our exhibits. So, Mackenzie, we had said it's Shark Days this weekend, and are you in there with sharks?
Holy moly, I am in here with sharks, Michelle. That's crazy, isn't it? Not even. Actually, I feel extremely lucky, and I'm totally biased, but I'm just going to say leopard sharks are my favorite of all sharks. I think they're just so beautiful. They have this amazing patterns. I don't know if you, exhibit A here, this beautiful, kind of saddle marking that's really, only those guys have it. That's why they're called leopard sharks, right? And they're endemic to find their food. So they'll eat worms, they'll chop off clam siphons, they'll eat kind of benthic fish, so fish that live on the bottom. So here, we don't really have any of that, but we do have whole squid, and they love whole squid.
So as Mackenzie mentioned, those leopard sharks, you might see some of them swimming. You'll see their mouth on the bottom of their body. What we know is Mackenzie isn't in any danger from those. There's about 360, 370 species of sharks around the world, and there are only about 4 to 6 species that are really dangerous to people. Luckily, these leopard sharks are not one of them. And you know, Mackenzie, we always talk about this, but people are sometimes scared of sharks and they think that, ooh, they might be killed by a shark. How many people here have a TV at their house?
I do.
Okay, did you guys know that you're about 10 times more likely to die when your TV falls off the wall on top of your head than you are to die from a shark bite? So that actually happens every year. So we always want you to leave here saying TVs are much more dangerous than sharks are.
That's a really good statistic. I know I always hear these kind of really wild statistics, like you're more likely to be killed by a vending machine than a shark and stuff. It really puts it in perspective.
I think so. You know, Mackenzie, in front of you, there's a whole group of little fish that are kind of hanging out down on this ledge.
Oh, I know. How cute are they? So those are rockfish. We have tons of species of rockfish. I don't know the exact number in this exhibit and around Central California. And they're really amazing. And I feel like sometimes people get concerned, like, what? Ooh, what? Shark in a bucket. Sorry, I'm multitasking skills. Sometimes I'm challenged in here.
So, as Mackenzie mentioned, these guys are all rockfish, and we know what rockfish look like because a lot of them, even if they're different colors, they kind of have that same behavior. You might see them laying around on one of the shelves in our exhibits. You might see them kind of hanging and just sort of swaying back and forth. Sometimes they're even hanging upside down. And with the 70 species of rockfish out in Monterey Bay, they really do grow very slowly. So most of them have to be 18 to 20 years old before they can reproduce. And what we know is that a number of the species actually live to be more than 100 years old. How many people in the audience are more than 100 today? No. So some of those rockfish will actually live a really long time, and a number of them that are in this exhibit were in here when we first started this exhibit back in 1984.
That is so amazing. I mean, it always blows my mind, you know. What is that oldest rockfish, you know, was 200 and something?
Yeah, there was a rockfish who lived in a scientist's lab, and he actually, the scientist kept retiring, and the rockfish was still there. People were still studying him, and what it turned out is that by the time the rockfish passed away and they checked his ear bones to see how old he was actually 204 years old. So even though a lot of them will live to be more than 100, that's the first documented case of one living to be more than 200 years old.
Beethoven playing symphonies, and this one rockfish was born, you know?
Yeah.
And it brings up an interesting point, you know, we only speculate how old things are until we actually have a specimen like that. But I think that they kind of guess that leopard sharks get 25 to 30 years old, but it's because, leopard sharks, speaking of, it's because one was tagged in 1979 in the San Francisco Bay, and then they recaught him in 1999, 20 years later, and they think, well, they lived definitely 20 years.
That's right, but we don't always know what some of those animals out in the wild. So, you know, Mackenzie, as you're trying to feed a squid to one of those sharks in there, sometimes you might have a partner who's helping you when you're doing the kelp forest feeding.
That's right, Michelle. Yeah, I don't know. Is anybody in the audience scuba dive? Anybody ever tried that stuff? A couple. So, you probably know the most important rule of scuba is you never go scuba diving alone. And I'm definitely not alone. I'm actually not on scuba either. I have surface applied air. That's what this cord's all about. And on the other side is my dive buddy, Andrew. He's making sure my electronics are working so I can talk to you and hear you, and as well as I have air. So that's his main job. And he has a second job too. He's going to make sure all our little fish, all the anchovies get fed. Woo, sharks!
Somebody's hungry.
I know, seriously.
Maybe he doesn't have too many table manners.
Let's see.
days, everybody. I am the voice from above. My name is Andrew, and I'm acting as Mackenzie's dive buddy while she is surface supply diving at this moment. So that's my primary role as her buddy, but my secondary task is to feed out some krill, some small shrimp-like crustaceans to our schoolfish as well as our kelp canopy dwellers. So here comes that krill.
That's right. Well, this kelp forest is really kind of like a high-rise apartment building, and you'll notice that, as Mackenzie said, some of those littler fish, sardines or anchovies, will stay up near the surface. They'll get their food that Andrew had thrown in with that krill, and we've got some of the larger species that are down here. So, Mackenzie, I know that you always want to take questions from the audience. Are you ready for a few?
Yeah, sure.
So,
I can't say I can answer all of them, but at least I can pull the fun.
So if you have a question, if you can raise your hand and shout it out, and then I'll talk to Mackenzie through the microphone. How many times have you gone scuba diving, Mackenzie?
Oh my gosh. I really wish I knew that answer. Well, I have been scuba diving for 15 years. The multitasking challenge. And in that 15 years, you know, I probably have 250 dives. I have to be honest, I have not logged them all. Which you should log all your dives if you're going to get certified, but I'd say that's probably a good guess. That's a good question, thanks.
Ooh, how does it feel underwater?
Oh my gosh, it feels amazing. It's actually the reason why I got into scuba was because I thought it'd be really cool to be an astronaut and go into space. And this is probably realistically the closest I would get. So it really feels like flying, you know? Just float. And it's not as cold because we have these awesome wetsuits.
And speaking of your gear, Mackenzie, how are you hearing me when I'm talking through the microphone?
That blows my mind too. So I have 2 waterproof speakers smushed into my hood, the neoprene cap I have on my head. And it's just like a normal speaker, actually. We used to have the phones on, and now we have the speakers. And there's actually a microphone in this on the mask, the full face mask I have. So air next to my face and a microphone.
Very cool. Very cool. I don't know who was next, but tell me your question. How cold is the water today?
I actually don't have the thermometer with me, but I would think like 58. It's really actually quite warm. Normally our average is around 55 here in Monterey Bay, but this year we had exceptionally warm water. Sometimes, you know, in the low 60s, which is kind of unusual for around because I think that's my favorite part about this exhibit is the giant kelp, actually.
And it's pretty amazing. Out in the wild, that plant will grow anywhere from 18 to 24 inches a day, and in our exhibit here, it grows about 5 inches every single day.
I know. That's amazing.
Yeah. Well, Mackenzie, I know we've come to the end of our time, and I know you had wanted to mention Shark Days again, and then also, is there something that you brought with you in your feeding bucket?
Oh, are you referring to the seafood watch?
Hi, Mikey. I keep your seafood on mine.
Just outside. Michelle also has some ways you can pick up so you can ensure you're eating, sustainably caught seafood. It always feels better.
That's right. So Mackenzie has the giant version, but we've got seafood watch cards. I've got sushi cards. You can also get those at the front desk and at a number of places in the aquarium. And then we've got the little Shark Days activity guides for the kids. Those are also available at the front. But we thank